The laughter echoed down the hallway of the crowded military supply store, bouncing off the concrete walls like a cruel reminder that some people would never understand what real sacrifice looked like. A few young men in uniform stood near the counter, smirking as they pointed toward a quiet woman at the end of the aisle. Her uniform wasn't standard issue, a faded set of tactical fatigues, slightly worn, with a patch on her arm that none of them recognized. To them, she looked like a wannabe, someone trying to wear honor she hadn't earned. But what they didn't know was that the patch she wore wasn't just a decoration. It was a silent testimony to things done in shadows, to lives saved and lost, and to missions that would never see the light of day. The woman's name was Evelyn Cross, and her story began far from that store, deep in the scorching deserts of a land where silence and danger lived side by side. She had served in an elite joint task force that didn't officially exist, made up of operatives whose names would never appear in any public record. For years, she had been deployed in the world's most volatile regions, places where every step could be your last. Her patch, a black emblem with a crimson insignia stitched in precise detail, represented her unit, one that answered directly to the highest levels of command. It was a mark few were given, and fewer survived long enough to wear. But none of that was visible in the dim fluorescent light of the store that day. The soldiers didn't see the memories behind her eyes, the friends buried beneath foreign sands, the nights spent in silent radio contact waiting for an extraction that almost never came. They saw only what was in front of them, a woman in a uniform they didn't recognize. The first insult came quietly, a mutter under someone's breath. Then the chuckles started. One of them walked past, glanced at her patch, and scoffed that it looked like something from a surplus store. Evelyn didn't react. She had faced worse, far worse. But somewhere deep down the word still stung. She turned back to the counter to pay for a small box of service pins, mementos she had been collecting for a memorial she was building for her fallen team. As she reached for her wallet, the store doors opened and the room fell silent. A tall, broad-shouldered man in full uniform entered, his rank insignia gleaming under the lights. A 4-star general, the kind of presence that made even the air in the room stand still. The laughter stopped immediately. The soldiers straightened up, saluting out of instinct. But the general's eyes weren't on them. He was looking directly at Evelyn. He froze mid-step. His face softened almost imperceptibly as his gaze dropped to the crimson patch on her arm. For a moment, the store seemed to disappear. It was just the two of them and the memory of something shared that no one else would ever understand. Then, in front of the stunned crowd, the general took a slow step forward, came to attention, and saluted. Not a casual nod and a full salute. The kind that carries the weight of respect, gratitude, and unspoken history. The room went completely silent. The young soldiers looked at one another in disbelief, their faces pale. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had seen too much. He said nothing about rank or recognition, just 4 words that changed everything. No civilian should own that patch. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of truth, one that only someone who had seen what she'd seen would understand. He knew exactly where that patch came from, what it represented, and how few people had the right to wear it. Evelyn didn't respond. She simply nodded, a silent acknowledgement between warriors. The general turned to the soldiers, his expression hardening. The lesson was unspoken but unmistakable. The young men who had laughed moments earlier now stood frozen, shame etched across their faces. They understood now she wasn't pretending. She was the reason they even had the luxury of standing in that store, safe, free, and alive. Evelyn gathered her things quietly, thanked the cashier, and walked out. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The silence that followed her was louder than any insult could ever be. Outside, as the wind tugged at her sleeve, Evelyn looked up at the sky, the same sky she'd stared at through the cracked visor of her helmet so many years ago. She thought of her team, of the faces that would never return, of the radio calls that went unanswered. That patch wasn't for pride. It was for them. Every time she wore it, she carried them with her. And though no one would ever truly know what she had done, she didn't need them to. Honor doesn't need witnesses. Weeks later, one of the young soldiers from that day found her name online. It wasn't in any public military directory, but buried deep in an old archived article, there was a brief mention of a covert mission, Operation Silent Veil, and a single photo. It showed a group of shadowed figures in full gear, standing beneath a dawn sky, their insignia barely visible. In the center stood Evelyn Cross, her crimson patch catching the first light of morning. The caption read, "Those who wore the mark carried the unseen burdens of peace." And that was the moment the soldier understood. Some heroes don't ask to be remembered. They simply live quietly among us, their stories written not in medals or parades, but in the silence of the lives they saved. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Legends of History. Your support helps us keep these stories of courage and sacrifice alive for generations to come. Special request: tell us in the comments what true respect means to you, and whose story you think deserves to be told next.